My ex told me you'll come crawling back. That was 5 years ago. She's still waiting while I'm living in Bali with my new wife. I'm a 27-year-old guy. And when I met Sarah, I thought I'd met the love of my life. It wasn't just her smile or the way her eyes lit up when she talked about her dreams. It was everything. She had this energy that made the world feel alive, and somehow she made me feel like I was enough. From the very first week, we'd stay up until 3 a.m., talking about everything: our careers, our families, the kind of life we wanted to build. She laughed at my terrible puns, listened when I rambled about my little creative projects, and told me she loved my ambition. Honestly, I'd never felt so understood, so seen, so alive. At the same time, were tiny, almost unnoticeable things that didn't seem right at first. She'd tease me about my friends, how they dressed, the way they talked, even little quirks she found annoying. At the time, I laughed it off because it seemed playful, harmless. She'd make these jokes about how lucky I was to have her voice teasing, but just enough to sting a little. I'd tell myself it was all charm, that this was just part of her flirty, confident personality. And honestly, it worked every time. I believed her. I craved that attention, that affirmation. Like I was catching glimpses of a perfect world that I'd only ever imagined. We'd spend hours planning trips we'd take, apartments we'd decorate, and dreams we'd chase together. I trusted her completely. I shared things I'd never told anyone, my deepest fears and wildest ambitions, and she made me feel safe. It was intoxicating, the kind of love that made everything else fade into the background. For a while, I honestly believed nothing could touch us. But there was a faint tension beneath it all. Like a shadow I couldn't quite name. Little things lingered in the back of my mind: her sharp laughs at my insecurities, the subtle digs masked as jokes. I ignored them, thinking maybe that's just how love works: playful teasing, harmless sarcasm. I had no idea how wrong I was, and yet, in that moment, I felt unstoppable with her. Until everything began to unravel. Things started off so subtle that I almost didn't notice them. I'm a 27-year-old guy, and back then, I was completely smitten blind in the best possible way. But over time, Sarah's playful teasing began to take on a sharper edge. She'd comment on the way I spent my money, shrugging off my hobbies as silly or unnecessary. "You really think buying that is going to help you succeed?" she'd ask, her tone casual, almost joking. But underneath it, there was something sharper. She was testing boundaries. I laughed, told her she was exaggerating, but the seed of doubt had been planted. It wasn't just about money. She started questioning my choices about friends, subtly undermining them in casual conversation. "Are you sure you want to hang out with them tonight?" she'd ask with a smirk, making me second-guess people I'd known for years. I tried to shrug it off, telling myself it was normal for partners to care. But I could feel a tension creeping in, a quiet, nagging sensation I didn't fully understand yet. One night, I remember sitting on my couch, scrolling through my phone, my friend's texts lighting up the screen, when she leaned over and said, "Sometimes I just don't get why you keep letting them influence you. You'd be so much further without their distractions." I laughed awkwardly, feeling both embarrassed and defensive, but she didn't stop there. She had this uncanny way of making her control feel like advice, like concern. I was too naive to see the trap. Even worse, little cracks in our relationship started showing socially. I'd notice her smirking at my insecurities in front of other people, laughing in ways that made me shrink inward, and it stung more than I'd ever admit. I remember thinking, this isn't how love feels, but maybe I'm overreacting. Maybe this is just who she is by that point. The thrill of being with her still outweighed the discomfort, but those first red flags had taken root. They were faint, almost invisible, but they were there. And I had no idea how much worse it was about to get. I'm a 27-year-old guy. And by the time I proposed to Sarah, I genuinely believed we were untouchable. The night I got down on one knee in that tiny, candlelit restaurant, everything felt cinematic, her eyes glimmering, the soft clink of glasses around us, and the faint smell of roses lingering from the centerpiece. "Yes," she whispered, her voice shaking slightly, and my heart practically exploded. I felt like I'd won a lifetime jackpot, like the universe had finally aligned. We hugged, laughed, kissed down for that moment. The world was ours. But even in that perfect moment, little things began to creep in, the shadows I'd been ignoring. She started hinting at controlling the wedding guest list, casually tossing in remarks like, "We don't need your cousin there, do we? They're kind of boring." I laughed it off, but it stung more than I wanted to admit. She also had this habit of questioning my job choices, not in a supportive way, but in a way that made me feel small. "You really think that's the right move for you?" "I just worry about how it'll reflect on us," she said one evening, her smile sharp beneath the surface. Despite these subtle tensions, I was intoxicated by the love and excitement of the engagement. We spent nights planning our future apartment, talking about trips, imagining our life together. And I shared my wildest dreams with her, thinking she was my partner in every sense. She listened, nodded, encouraged, but always with a slight undertone of judgment hidden beneath her charm. The thing is, I didn't notice the pattern yet. I was too focused on the glittering future she promised, too enamored with the intensity of our connection to see the cracks widening around us. Friends would hint at small things, offhand comments about her temper or how she treated me, but I waved it off. I thought, maybe that's just how relationships get intense. Maybe I'm just overthinking, and yet, as I drifted off to sleep that night, hearing her soft breathing next to me, I felt an odd, unnameable tension, a flicker in the back of my mind. Something told me this story wasn't going to stay as perfect as it looked, because love, I was learning, often comes wrapped in shadow seam. A 27-year-old guy. And that's when the first real cracks started showing in our so-called perfect relationship. At first, it was little things. She'd cancel plans last minute with flimsy excuses, say she was tired or had to work late. But I'd catch her posting pictures online of dinner with friends I'd never heard of. My gut twisted, but I told myself it was nothing. Maybe I was being paranoid. Then came the subtle lies. I'd ask about texts or calls, and she'd roll her eyes, laugh it off. "You're imagining things," she said once, her voice dripping with charm, but I felt the sting anyway. I began noticing patterns: her phone always face down, quick replies when I walked in, hushed conversations that stopped abruptly when I approached. And the worst part? I kept rationalizing it. She's busy, she's stressed, maybe I just need to trust her. Even friends started hinting. One night, my best friend leaned over at a bar and said, "Dude, I don't want to freak you out, but I've seen some of her behavior. It's weird." I laughed nervously, maybe trying to laugh away the fear clawing at my chest. But inside, I knew things were shifting. The tension in the apartment grew heavy. Even the air felt different. She began to distance herself emotionally, too. Conversations felt sharp. Moments that used to feel warm now carried a subtle edge. She criticized my opinions casually, dismissed my achievements as nice, but not enough, and laughed when I'd expressed disappointment. The bond that once felt unbreakable, now frayed, thread by thread. One evening, I remember sitting on the balcony, the city lights twinkling below, feeling a cold ache in my chest. I wanted to scream, to shake myself out of this haze of confusion, but I froze. I didn't know how to confront it, how to admit the truth that had been lurking for weeks. The person I loved might be hiding something from me, and deep down, I had no idea how much worse it was about to get him, a 27-year-old guy. And I'll never forget the night I found out. It wasn't dramatic, no shouting, no sudden confrontations, but the blow hit me harder than anything I'd ever experienced. I was scrolling through my phone, trying to make sense of my growing anxiety, and I stumbled upon messages I shouldn't have seen, names I didn't recognize, texts that were flirty, intimate. The little lies, the cancellations, the hidden conversations, it all clicked. My heart sank so low, I felt like I couldn't breathe. I confronted her in the living room. "Who's Alex?" I asked, my voice shaking, hands gripping the edge of the table. She looked at me like I was crazy, her smile thin and cold. "You're imagining things." "It's nothing," she said, brushing past me, but I knew the tone, the one I'd tried to ignore, creeping into our life. I felt a sharp sting in my chest, like the floor had disappeared under me. I couldn't trust my eyes, couldn't trust her words. Couldn't trust anything I thought I knew. It wasn't just the infidelity that crushed MIT, it was the betrayal of trust. The years of vulnerability I'd shared thinking I was safe. Every secret, every fear, every dream I'd confided in her suddenly felt like it had been used as ammunition. I could see her smirking in subtle ways I hadn't noticed before. Realizing maybe she knew the damage she could do, I remember pacing the apartment late that night. The faint hum of the refrigerator and the city outside my window doing nothing to comfort me. I felt dizzy, nauseous, a pit in my stomach that seemed to stretch into forever. I wanted to scream, to run, to disappear, but I also wanted answers. Closure. Something to make sense of the chaos she'd created by the end of that night. I realized one terrible truth. The person I trusted the most in my life had been lying, manipulating, and betraying me all along. And she didn't even seem remorseful. I didn't know it then. But that was only the beginning. I'm a 27-year-old guy. I remember the exact words Sarah said that night, like a knife twisting in my chest. I had confronted her again after finding more messages evidence. I couldn't ignore, and she laughed. Not a soft laugh, not a nervous laugh, but the kind that makes your chest tighten and your stomach drop. She looked me straight in the eyes and said, "You'll come crawling back. I always know you'll come back to me." I froze. I didn't know whether to scream, cry, or walk away forever. Those words hung in the room like a threat disguised as confidence. In that instant, I realized how little she cared about the betrayal itself. It wasn't about guilt or regret, it was about control. She believed that no matter what, I would always be hers. That was her power, or at least, that's what she thought. I left that apartment that night with my heart pounding, my chest tight, and the city lights blurring beneath the car windows as I drove aimlessly. I felt hollow and exposed, like every moment I had trusted her had been a lie. I remember thinking, she's still trying to pull me back into her web. Walking into my empty apartment later, I felt the silence suffocating. The faint smell of her perfume lingered on the couch cushions, mocking me. I could replay her words over and over in my head. "You'll come crawling back." My hands shook as I grabbed a bottle of water, staring out the window at the darkened streets. For the first time, I truly understood the depth of emotional manipulation. How? Someone could break you, but still make you feel like it's your fault, or worse, your future. I sat there, numb, replaying every memory we had together. The laughter, the long nights, the promises, it all felt tainted now. And deep down, I knew this wasn't just heartbreak. This was the moment everything had changed. Little did I know the rock bottom was still ahead. I'm a 27-year-old guy, and that's when I hit a level of despair I didn't think was possible. After leaving Sarah, the first few weeks felt like walking through a fog. Nights were the worst, lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying every lie, every betrayal, every casual smirk that had cut deeper than I wanted to admit. I started drinking more than I should, scrolling endlessly through my phone, looking for signs, anything that could explain why she had done this to me. One night I almost broke. I picked up my phone, fingers trembling, and opened a message draft I had been saving to send her. The words were begging, pleading, asking for clarity, for her to admit the truth, maybe even for her to take me back. I hesitated, thumb hovering over the send button, and I felt a weight in my chest that I can't describe. The thought of exposing myself like that, of giving her any more control, was terrifying, but I couldn't stop myself. I ended up deleting the draft. I felt numb, hollow, like I had lost a part of myself I would never get back. Friends called, texted, offered advice, but nothing touched the raw ache. Even the city outside, with its hum of life and lights flickering through my window, felt distant, unreal. I was drowning in what-ifs and memories, trapped in a loop of regret and sorrow. I remember standing on the balcony one rainy evening, rain soaking my hair, water running down my arms, and I whispered to the empty air, "I can't do this anymore." It wasn't a ply, it was surrender. I felt completely powerless, utterly exposed, and convinced I'd never recover. That moment, with the storm thrashing around me, was the closest I've ever come to losing myself entirely. But in that darkness, a tiny spark remained, one small thought whispering that maybe, just maybe, life could still change. And I clung to it, even if I didn't know how, Because what comes after rock bottom is always the beginning of something awesome. A 28-year-old guy now. Slowly, painfully slowly, I started to rebuild. It wasn't dramatic. There was no sudden aha moment, just countless small steps forward. I focused on my career, throwing myself into projects that had always mattered to me but which I'd neglected while wrapped up in Sarah's world. I started working out again, running through empty streets at dawn, feeling the cold wind bite at my face and remind me that I was alive, that I still had control over something, anything. And then, almost unexpectedly, she came into my life, my future wife. She was the opposite of Sarah in every way, yet somehow the universe had positioned her perfectly in my path. She wasn't dazzling, manipulative, or dramatic. She was genuine, supportive, and quietly amazing. She asked questions, listened to my stories, and didn't judge. Every conversation with her felt like a balm on old wounds, like finally breathing after being underwater too long. I realized I could trust someone again, and that trust felt like freedom. Even with this new hope, the shadow of Sarah lingered. Occasionally I'd catch myself remembering her words, "You'll come crawling back." They no longer filled me with panic or fear, but with disbelief and slowly a quiet sense of empowerment. I was free now, living a life that was mine. Not dictated by her manipulations or demands. I spent afternoons in coffee shops, laptop open, planning trips, building businesses, making memories. And for the first time in years, I felt a sense of balance. The sunsets weren't just beautiful, they were mine to enjoy. And she, the one who claimed I'd never leave her grip, was nowhere in my reality. But life has a way of testing us. Just when I began to fully believe I was past it, whispers from the past started creeping back into my life. And I knew that a confrontation, one way or another, was inevitable. Because some ghosts don't just vanish, they wait. I'm a 32-year-old guy now, living in Bali with my wife, and life feels surreal compared to those dark days with Sarah. The mornings are filled with sunlight pouring through the balcony, the scent of salt and frangipani in the air, and the quiet hum of waves below. My career has taken off beyond what I thought possible, and my relationship with my wife is built on trust, laughter, and mutual respect, everything I had lacked before. I wake up grateful, aware that this life, this freedom, something Sarah could never have given me. Occasionally, mutual friends drop hints about her, almost as if testing me. "Have you heard what Sarah's up to?" one would ask casually. At first, I shrugged, but then I started hearing things. Failed relationships, lingering obsession, career stagnation. She's stuck, waiting for someone who's no longer there. Fixating on a fantasy of control that slipped through her fingers years ago. It's surreal and almost darkly satisfying seeing someone who once held so much power over me powerless now. I remember sitting in a cafe, watching my wife laugh across the table and feeling a profound contrast. Back then, my nights were sleepless, my heart heavy with betrayal. Now my nights are peaceful, my heart full. Every achievement, every laugh, every quiet moment of contentment feels like a tiny victory. It's not vengeance in the traditional sense. I didn't have to confront her directly, but it's the kind of revenge that hurts far more, living fully while she's left waiting. And yet, there's a quiet tension lingering in my mind, a curiosity I can't shake. How long has she been holding on to the idea that I'd return? She finally realized that the man she thought she could control is gone. I sip my coffee, slowly letting the sun warm my face, knowing the truth. She's still waiting. And it's the ultimate confirmation that I made the right choice. But what happens when she finally reaches out? That's something I couldn't have anticipated. I'm a 32-year-old guy, and I couldn't believe it when I saw her message pop up one quiet evening. Sarah, after 5 long years, had reached out. Her words were carefully crafted, laced with nostalgia, regret, and a hint of desperation. "I still think about you. Don't you ever miss me?" she typed, as if she expected a flood of emotion from me. I felt a strange mix of disbelief and satisfaction. Reading her message, I realized something profound. She had truly believed I'd come back. She had spent years waiting, clinging to the idea that she could pull me back into her orbit. Life hadn't moved forward the way mine had. She was stuck, obsessed with the past, while I was thriving in every way. It was ironic, almost cruelly poetic. The person who once held so much control over me was now powerless. Yes. Left suspended in her own illusions. I stared at the screen, fingers hovering over the keyboard. Part of me wanted to respond, to gloat, maybe even poke at the wound a little, but I didn't. Instead, I felt a quiet, almost meditative satisfaction. I didn't need to send a single word. Living my life fully, with my wife, with freedom and happiness, was proof enough that she had lost. I remembered every manipulation, every sly comment, every time she had tried to make me feel small. And now, the roles had completely reversed. The irony wasn't just delicious, it was a reminder of how far I'd come. She had said I'd come crawling back, and yet here I was, halfway across the world, completely unbound by her games. The funny thing was, her message didn't hurt. It didn't sting or provoke anger. Instead, it was a moment of closure, a confirmation that the past had finally lost its grip. I took a deep breath, the humid Bali air filling my lungs, and smiled. But deep down, I knew she was still waiting. Still hoping for a miracle that would never commune a 32-year-old guy. And looking back, I can't believe how much I've changed since those dark days with Sarah. At the time, I felt trapped, betrayed, and powerless. But now I see how necessary all that pain was. Every sleepless night, every tear, every moment of self-doubt forced me to confront who I was and what I would never tolerate again. I've learned to recognize red flags, to value myself, and to never let anyone's manipulations define my worth. I spend mornings walking along the Bali shore, watching the waves crash against the rocks, and I think about how far I've come. My wife walks beside me, laughing about something trivial, and it strikes me how different my life is now. She supports my dreams without judgment, encourages me when I falter, and never belittles me for the choices I make. It's such a stark contrast to the constant tension and gaslighting I endured before that it sometimes feels surreal. I also reflect on Sarah not with anger, but with clarity. She was toxic, yes, but I allowed myself to be vulnerable and trusting. That vulnerability was not weakness. It was a part of me that wanted love and partnership. I see now that the lesson wasn't about avoiding pain, but about growing stronger because of it. Every betrayal I survived was like a scar that shaped me, a reminder that I could endure and rise above, and there's a strange satisfaction in knowing that. I'm thriving while she's left stuck in the past. I don't gloat or rub it in. The revenge isn't in humiliation. It's in living fully, authentically, and unapologetically. My happiness is my power, and for the first time, I feel untouchable in the best possible way. But even as I enjoy this peace, there's a small, quiet thrill in knowing she's still waiting, still hoping, and still clinging to the fantasy that I might return. Because sometimes, the most satisfying closure isn't confrontation. It's watching life move on while others remain frozen in their own illusions. I'm a 32-year-old guy, and as I stand on the balcony of our Bali apartment, the sun dipping into the horizon, I finally feel what true closure is. The sky burns gold and pink, the warm breeze brushing my face, and my wife laughs behind me at something silly I said. I turn and see her smile, full of trust and love, and in that moment I realize how far I've come. I have everything Sarah could never give me: freedom, respect, joy, and a partner who genuinely wants the best for me. I think back to that night she said, "You'll come crawling back," and I can't help but smirk. She's still waiting after all these years, clinging to a fantasy that no longer exists. It's ironic, almost poetic, that the person who once had so much control over my life is powerless now. The thrill of her imagined power has completely dissipated, replaced by the quiet, unshakable satisfaction of knowing that I've truly moved on. Walking along the balcony with my wife, the air filled with the scent of frangipani and distant ocean salt, I feel a profound sense of liberation. Every betrayal, every sleepless night, every tear shed in the dark has led me here. I didn't need to retaliate, to humiliate, or even respond to her attempts at contact. The ultimate revenge was simpler than I ever imagined. Living fully and thriving while she remains trapped in the past, I know she may reach out again. Or dwell forever on what she thinks she lost, but it doesn't matter. I'm no longer the person who doubted, who feared, who let herself be manipulated. I am free. I am happy. I am unstoppable. And as I watch the sun disappear beneath the horizon, I feel it in my bones. Life doesn't always give closure in words or confrontation. Sometimes, the most powerful ending is simply this: walking away, letting go, and finally living the life that was always meant for you. The past has lost its grip. I've never felt more alive.